I've played tons of games in my life, and one of the coolest parts about growing up when I did was that I was able to rent games. There were a few different places you could go to, Hollywood Video, mom and pop shops here and there, but my family, we were a Blockbuster family. Going to Blockbuster was a summer treat for me. Every summer in my life I spent at my grandmother's house in Houma, Louisiana, and my grandfather would always let me rent 2 games a week. It was like he saved up money to make sure that my summer was epic. And while those moments are just a memory of the past, I was challenged to remember them by SegaCDUniverse, who won the second Firefighter episode giveaway. Now, he mentioned the best and the worst, but today I'm going to talk about the worst, right? Because I can make 2 episodes out of this. So I'm going to focus on the bad ones, the ones that really upset me as a kid on a psychological level, okay? Let's begin. Growing up, I knew about Kirby, but I never played any Kirby games. In fact, my first exposure to the little pink suck machine was Super Smash Bros., where I would use him relentlessly to beat my sister and my dad. But one day, I decided to see what all of the fuss was about, and I rented Kirby 64, The Crystal Shards. At first, I was impressed. It was lofty, it was fun, the music wasn't bad, and it was easy. The problem is, it never stopped being easy. Like ever. I beat it in one sitting, staying up late, and the game was absolutely absent of any challenge, and for the most part, we were only going left to right. There really wasn't anything to make this game stand out. I thought to myself, Kirby is easy, and I kept that mindset for a while, up until a few months ago when I played Kirby's Dream Land on the Game Boy. That game is easy as shit until it matters, right, near the end of the game. But Kirby 64, I just didn't like it. At all. Well, I think we all know someone who got suckered into playing this one. Hell, it might even be you. But for me, all I had to do was look in the mirror. I loved Superman growing up. He was the perfect superhero. He could do anything. He was invulnerable, he could fly, he could shoot lasers out of his eyes, and use the same laser eyes to see through shit with X-ray vision. He could hear everything, he could freeze things with his breath, and he could go fast. He was the superhero. And then Titus got a hold of the IP and totally fucked it up! The whole idea of the game is that Lex Luthor has trapped everyone inside of this virtual reality version of Metropolis by way of Brainiac, right? And it's our job to beat all 14 miserable levels to destroy the virtual world. This world, by the way, is filled with kryptonite fog. Yeah, kryptonite fog. That's a fancy way of saying shitty draw distance mask. Because that's exactly what it is. Now, we all shit on this game, and for good reason. It's total garbage, right? The controls are stiff, the requirements for each mission are oddly specific and asinine, the graphics are dreadful, and it's just a bad game. And what's so funny to me is that there was supposed to be a PS1 version from Blue Sky Software. Blue Sky's career died on the PS1, so I can't imagine how bad it would have been. If I think about the timeline of summers that I rented games, this was near the end of it. I started building my own little library of games, and I was starting to play more adventure games, ones that took longer than a weekend to beat, or I was playing flash games. Those were free, right? Stuntman, though, $5 for a really bad time. It marks the one time that I ever rented a game where the disc was so mangled that it didn't work on my PS2. I remember my grandfather being so angry because he just cracked open a nice cold Diet Coke, and I asked him to drive me back across town to the Blockbuster, right? Which wasn't that far, but as an adult, I can relate to how annoying it is when you settle down for the day and you instantly have to get back up to do something for your kids, right? Now, Stuntman as a game, it isn't bad. Like, I don't recommend it to anyone. In fact, you can avoid it completely, but if you do choose to play it, know that it is 100% trial and error. You can only make so many mistakes before the take is scrapped and you do it again. The whole idea is that the stunt coordinator will tell you what the stunts are going to be, but it's a very brief skim over what you're actually going to do. Once action is called, you'll get on-the-spot callouts. And good luck getting them right the 5th time, much less the 1st time. He'll say stuff like, pass on right, through the barrels, hard left, file your taxes, fist your ass, under the semi, copy that floppy, go to bed, drink water, over the cliff, barrel roll. You get it, right? That's the whole game. I love Street Fighter. I've always loved Street Fighter. It was a game I remember from the earliest years of my childhood, from arcade cabinets to my cousin owning it on a Super Nintendo, to me playing it on the Anniversary Edition, right, which had Street Fighter 3 as well, which was awesome. But one day I saw a different kind of Street Fighter. It wasn't made by Capcom, it was made by Arika. And this was the third one. Where are the other two? The box even looked so cool. I had never seen such a realistic Ryu before, so I brought it home, and it was different, but not in a good way. It was refreshing to have a cool 3D fighting game in the franchise, and it was even cooler to be able to pick up tag team members and trade out with them mid-fight, or call them in for either the critical parade or the momentary combo, but the experience is so generic. It's worth checking out to see how Street Fighter was handled by Arika, and I do want to collect them at some point. I've always been curious to analyze the changes between the versions, but this one, it's really forgettable. Sorry. As a kid, I loved Pokemon, right? The whole idea. I never collected the cards, I didn't really watch the show, but I did like the idea of Pokemon, namely because of Pokemon Snap and Pokemon Stadium. One day I saw Hey You Pikachu and thought the idea of talking to Pikachu through a microphone was awesome, and for the first 10 minutes, it was! I was sitting there having a rudimentary conversation with Pikachu, creating stews, playing with his friends, getting to know him, and then I realized just how bare bones this game actually is. It did come with a nifty accessory though, the VRU, or the voice recognition system. It was a simple box which you connect to controller port 4, and it has a tiny little pencil microphone, and it was the only game in the US to use it. In Japan, Densha to Go 64 used it optionally, so yeah, I'm the proud owner of a fucking simple microphone that doesn't really measure my voice, because it's calibrated for kids, right? So the whole entire game I was saying, I shit you not,
Hey Pikachu, come here you little rat bastard! Go get the onion, put it down, carrot, wow, thunderbolt! Good night, Pikachu!
You have to speak at that level if you want the game to recognize your voice. And it drove my dogs, my wife, and my kids insane. It was so worth it, but not as a kid. Before we continue, I do want to point out that we are currently working towards a major milestone of 8,000 subscribers, and if we accomplish that, I'll make a special video the community's choosing. Currently, roughly 63% of the folks watching my videos aren't subscribed, so feel free to join the community. It's a great time, and I'd love to have you here. Let's get back to the action. One of my favorite rentals was Rainbow Six on the Nintendo 64. What a game! I could control fire squads, implement commands, map out the attack before it ever happened, and guess what? With that level of technical prowess, you could finish a map rather efficiently, which I thought to be fantastic. I absolutely adore that game. But one time, I wanted to get games for my Game Boy Color, and like I said, I always grab two, so what did I get? I grabbed Pokemon Crystal, and I grabbed Rainbow Six. Boy, what a goof am I! This game taught me the valuable lesson that a handheld port of a game that I enjoyed on a major platform is probably not going to be the same thing. It's going to be very minimalistic, right? Everything I loved about Rainbow Six on the Nintendo 64 was gone. There was no challenge. There was no purpose and tactics, and the AI was just stupid. But I will say one thing, at least it's not as shit as the PS1 version, right? The PS1 version of Rainbow Six is a game devoid of any and all fun. Just fuck it. Don't play Rainbow Six on anything other than the PC and the Nintendo 64. In a previous episode, I mentioned that there were times in my life where I was let down by superhero games. One of them was already mentioned, Superman 64. The second was Batman Vengeance. Hands down, one of the shittiest Batman games I've ever played, and I've played some shitty Batman games. This one is based on the new Batman Adventures, a show that I never bothered with. The one I watched was Batman Beyond, and guess what? That game fucking sucks on the Nintendo 64 as well. But my rental story for this is it's kind of hilarious. I rented it, I was beyond irritated at it, and I thought I would never play it again. But my grandmother distinctly remembered me renting it and decided to get me it for Christmas. Yeah, it's like when you throw out a haunted doll and it comes back, except this time it's a shitty PS2 game from Ubisoft Montreal. It's hard to explain why I hate this game, so I'll just try my best, and hopefully you understand. The game flow is extremely odd in Batman Vengeance, and if you take the time to play it, you'll know exactly what I mean, I promise. For many people, DMA design marked the beginning of their Grand Theft Auto adventures. For others, it may have been some of the software that they released on home computers like the Amiga and the Commodore 64. But for me, it was a novelty game known as Space Station Silicon Valley. Now, by looking at this footage, you might be thinking, oh hey, this looks fun. Yeah, it is, for like maybe the first stage, then it gets unnecessarily complicated. The whole gimmick is that we are a microchip that survives a ship crash, right? And as a microchip, we are susceptible to the elements. How do we avoid that? We jump inside of animals, rewire their nervous system, and control the animals. The gimmick wears off very quickly, and it feels like you're doing the same thing fairly consistently. And if that's not enough for you, you can't 100% the game because there's a glitch that keeps you from getting the trophy needed to unlock a bonus stage. Yeah, enjoy that. In some ways, it reminds me of Body Harvest, which was also made by DMA Design, but I've never really taken the time to play that one. I've only ever seen footage. This is probably the goofiest game that I ever rented, and I don't even know what appealed to me. Maybe it was the fact that it was the world's scariest of something, and I was notoriously easy to scare as a kid, so in my stupid juvenile mind, maybe I thought this was going to be a horror game that I could enjoy, but no, it's an open world driving game made by a very oddly specific company, Unique Development Studios, and published by Fox and Activision in tandem. It made sense that Fox was involved because the inspiration for the game was this TV show called World's Wildest Police Videos, and if you watched it, it was a compilation of all of these insane moments from around the world. Now, the game itself is kind of silly, but it has 20 missions, and it also has a free patrol and a pursuit mode. It's kind of hit or miss, but to me, it definitely wasn't one of the better racing games, or really any game that involved a car, that I rented as a kid. But as an adaptation of a TV show, it was definitely funny as hell to check out. Try! When you rent games, more often than not, you want to mix it up, right? I did. I was renting fighting games, I was renting adventure games, ones that were too hard, ones that were too easy, and sometimes it was nice to shake it up a little bit and get a sports game or two, right? I remember renting NFL Blitz for the Nintendo 64 and having an absolute blast. Quarterback Club, that was awesome too. Ready to Rumble, getting my butt kicked by it. But the one Nintendo 64 sports game I regret renting is Mike Piazza's Strike Zone. This game is laziness personified. Literally nothing about this game is great. It looks like muddled herbs and it plays the same. Now bear in mind, All-Star Baseball 99 and Major League Baseball featuring Ken Griffey Jr. were out, and they were better options if you ask me. I chose the one game that was as blurry as a smeared windshield during a shitstorm. It's horrible, and it just didn't stand out to the competitors at all. And that's it for today's episode. What are some of the worst games that you rented as a kid? I'd love to hear in the comments section below. Who knows, maybe you'll share a silly memory with someone in the community. Maybe you'll have a shared memory with someone. Speaking of our community, we're a wonderful gathering of video game enthusiasts that love remembering a time when life was just a little bit easier to live. And if you made it to the end of this episode, you're already home. So feel free to hit the subscribe button, and if you're feeling extra generous, you can also hit that thumbs up, as it directly impacts the visibility of the videos and the projects that I work on every single day. As always, from my family to your family, good energy, good vibes, Fortefyre out.